There's been a lot of hype around semi-solid state batteries being used in power stations. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure why. Solid state versus LiFePO4, I get it. Semi-solid versus LiFePO4, I'm not sure that there's enough difference between the two for me personally to care which chemistry is in my power station. But it sounds pretty cool as a sales point that there's EV grade batteries inside of this thing. What we really want to know here at the lab isn't, are the EV batteries good? It's, who the heck is Dabbsson and do they make a decent power station? So welcome back to the lab where our opinions cannot be bought. Today we're taking a look at the Dabbsson DBS2100 or something like that. Like I've already said, this power station is unique in the fact that it advertises an EV grade semi-solid state battery. They claim that the battery is more efficient, smaller, and performs a lot better than LiFePO4 batteries, which are basically the standard in all power stations. We're gonna be the judge of that. We've had our hands on this guy for a little while now here at the lab. We've put it through some testing, and today we want to share our honest feedback about this power station. But first, we are going to hit you guys with a super quick spec teardown in case you're not already familiar, most of you probably aren't, with the Dabbsson 2100. First up, this dense boy weighs 54 pounds. It does pass the tiny baby lift test, even though it weighs almost as much as he does. It's a 2150 watt hour battery bank, expandable up to 12,900 watt hours, which is actually not bad for a unit of this size. They claim this has 5 years longer lifespan than most power stations due to the chemistry, giving it a 15-year, 4,500 cycle lifespan. That's one of those things that only time will tell. It's got a 2400 watt inverter rated to surge at about 4,800 watts. You can charge this thing up with a regular AC 120 volt wall plug in your house, or you can charge it up with solar. The input for the solar is 1200 watts. When it comes to ports, it actually has 3 120 volt house plugs right here on the side and one 30 amp plug, which obviously is not a true 30 amp plug because it's not a 3600 watt inverter, but other power station companies do this all the time, where if you're pretty close, you could run most of your trailer or whatever off of this plug. On the front, you have a 12 volt car socket as well as 2 barrel connectors. Then you got 3 USB-Cs and 3 USB-As. You also have your battery expansion battery connector port right here. And then the AC and solar input is underneath this little flap on the side here. Very similar feel to EcoFlow. I'd even go as far as to say that it's the same as EcoFlow. Even this parallel port, I'm gonna test it after this video, but I'm pretty sure an EcoFlow cable will plug directly into this. The screen is okay. It's not my favorite, but it works and it shows you what you need to know. The app is also okay. It's just another thing that works, but it's not as modern and full of features as some of the other brands. And you can get this thing for $17.99. but probably less. At least that's the MSRP. There's a chart on their website that advertises that it's $1,199, so we suspect that that is like the permanent sale price. We've seen it as low as $999. That is really, really cheap for a unit like this, which is kind of how we ended up here in the first place. We're gonna jump right into testing with this power station. I know I kind of skimmed over the battery in the beginning. I'm gonna continue to skim over it, to be honest, but because it's advertising a different chemistry, we may as well talk about it in the test. And here's all I have to say about it. They say or claim that this EV grade semi-solid state battery is more energy dense than just a regular lithium iron phosphate battery. It's still lithium iron phosphate, it's just semi-solid state. We're not gonna get into that, but they claim it's more energy dense, which means it's a little bit smaller and a little bit lighter because you can put more into a smaller package. What I'm going to tell you about that is that if you put a very, very similarly sized EcoFlow Delta 2 Max beside this, it's just about the same battery, just about the same output minus like the 30 amp plug. And this thing is bigger and heavier, which you kind of would expect because it's just barely in specs. From the perspective of the specifications, it is just a little bit bigger, but it also is a little bit bigger in real life. So if you're looking at this going, oh my God, it's gonna be so much smaller and lighter and better than like the competition, it's not, it's the exact same. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. Here's how the testing went. This is a 2,150 watt hour battery bank. First thing we wanted to do was test the efficiency. If you had a 2100 watt mini split that you were trying to run, theoretically you should be able to run it for almost exactly 1 hour if this unit is 100% efficient. Most things aren't, so we wanted to find out just how efficient is it so you know how long is it actually going to run the things you want to run. We put on a 2150 watt load, so it should have lasted exactly an hour, and it overheated at 30%, which sucks. This thing there was nothing hot around it at the time. If you take a look at like the server rack cabinet we had beside, the battery cells inside of that cabinet, all of them were registering about 20 degrees, like the garage wasn't hot. So we actually ran this test again and we started the unit colder. We started it at 18 degrees. At 18 degrees, the battery on the app was flashing red near the end of the test saying it was getting so hot. And right before it shut off, it was actually like at the overheating temperature. So it made it was 82% efficient. Honestly, it doesn't matter what that load was. It was 82%, which is good, but realistically, like this is a smaller unit. If you're just camping, you have it in your trailer, whatever, it just sucks that if you have this thing at any moderate temperature, it's probably gonna overheat. Obviously that's using it at full tilt, but you gotta test these things at full tilt because that's when they're the least efficient. The fans are working the hardest, the inverter's working the hardest. It advertises it can run a 2400 watt load. It should be able to do that for the whole entire life of the battery. When it comes to charge speed, we plugged this into a regular 120 volt outlet in our house. It got up to about 80% in an hour and 15 minutes, but it took almost 2 hours to fully charge this unit from the wall. Obviously, past 80%, the input drops down, slows down to jam all the last little bit of percentages into the batteries. When it comes to the surge test, like I said earlier, it's got a 2400 watt inverter. So if you accidentally plug in 2500 watts, or you try to start a couple things at the same time, one of them is like a vacuum, and the vacuum ramps up and then comes back down just to get everything spinning, how well does it surge? And the answer is it does not surge. It just pulls voltage, which is like the one thing that I complain about all the time here on the channel when it happens, because it's terrible for your appliances. As soon as you go over 2400 watts, it just starts dropping the voltage down and down and down to make sure that the load stays under 2400 watts. Now I get that it's trying to protect itself and that some things like a vacuum can probably take a little bit of a slower start and get spinning. But if you were running like electronics or something that can't handle that voltage fluctuation off of this, you're gonna really mess some stuff up. It's absolutely terrible to run electronics on a fluctuating voltage. It's not recommended at all. When it comes to sound tests, seeing that it overheated, you would think it would be quiet and the fans aren't working enough, but it's actually relatively loud. When I first saw the fans come on, I'm like, wow, they really work hard. I held up like a piece of plastic so you could see it being sucked into the one side, blown out the other. I was pretty impressed. You hear them working. They're not quiet. Unfortunately, they don't do a good job, but there's no pro there. And the last thing that I like to know is pass through. If you're running a load off the front and you notice it starts to get low, can you plug AC power into the side of it or solar power into the side of it and start charging it up while you're still powering your load off the front? And the answer, annoyingly, again, is yes, but like no, because it tripped before it started going. So say for example, you had a computer running off of this and you're like, oh, it's about to die. I'm gonna just plug in like a generator, who knows? You plug AC power into this, it shuts your computer off, then turns your computer back on, which it's the first unit I've ever seen do that. In all the units we've ever reviewed here at the lab, this is the first one that does do pass through, but starts the process by shutting everything off and then bringing it back to life. It's a little weird. And now I feel like this unit just failed a ton of the tests. And I also feel like there's a ton of people out there who have these units who have made pretty positive videos. Now what I can say about that, because sometimes when we kind of are a little bit mean to products, people get mad. What I can say about that is this. This power station, like any power station, probably works just fine when you're barely using it. If you were to run some lights or your fridge when you go camping or just like little things off of this power station, sure, it's probably fine. But saying it has a 2400 watt inverter and not being able to run a 2100 watt load for the duration of the battery life is like buying a car and you see on the speedometer it goes to like 200 miles an hour and you're like, that's way more than I need. Obviously, like no one ever thinks about how fast the car goes, but imagine you went to merge onto the freeway and all of a sudden your car wouldn't accelerate. You found out, oh hey, by the way, even though your car looks like it goes fast, top speed is 65 miles an hour. Not being able to do these things that we're listing in the test doesn't mean it's the worst thing that's ever invented. It just means it should be able to do better. Every other brand that we recommend doesn't do these things. It surges properly. It's efficient the whole way. When we ran the second test, this is the exhaust side of the unit. We had the hot exhaust air blowing into the intake of the Delta 2 Max. So this thing was pulling in cold air, blowing out hot air. The hot air was going into the cold air side of the Delta 2 Max, and the Delta 2 Max didn't even overheat. And we were feeding it hot air. That's my point. Now, today we're actually skipping the what we like section because, as you guys have kind of guessed, there's not a whole lot that we do like. I mean, the functionality wise, the design of this is pretty cool. I actually do like the light, okay? The 12 volt, there's some things I do like about it, but here's why I don't like this power station, on top of the testing being poo-poo. The website is full of empty claims. They claim that this battery has enhanced thermal stability. It overheated on a simple test that most products we test don't overheat. It claims super fast charging. 2 hours. That's not that fast. They also claim on their website that their battery is the first battery that you can charge and use at the same time, trying to make it sound like revolutionary. It's not. We have tons of batteries. We've had them for years that you can charge and use at the same time. We think it's cool because not everyone does that, but they are not the first people to do that. They have no support. We called their phone number and it just hangs up.
The customer you are calling is unavailable at the moment. Please try again later.
I messaged their support on their website at 4:25 p.m. I said, hey, I'm looking to speak with someone about a question I have in regards to ordering this. What's your phone number? Because the one on the website that we called didn't work. They responded at 11:22 p.m. That's insane. That just tells you what kind of customer support you're going to be getting if you buy something like this. That's a major time gap. And the response was, hey, we don't have a phone number you can call. Not what you want. Look, at the end of the day, I think Dabbsson has some potential. I think the design and the specifications and the price and all the things are kind of right, but it just doesn't act the way I want it to act. It doesn't perform the way I want it to perform. Maybe down the road, Dabbsson will come back and do some better, but right now I wouldn't recommend buying one of these. We will leave some links to some power stations we do recommend in the description below. I'm sorry to make a negative video, but our job here is to provide honest feedback for you guys and try to help to build this resource of reviews and things so you don't end up buying something you regret. And unfortunately, that's what this would be. So that is all we got. Make sure you guys are subscribed. Make sure you guys check out some other videos. I will catch you in the next one. Thank you guys so much for watching. Peace out and stay charged.